The next view that we're going to work on is going to be the location view, or just the big map that we created earlier. And I am going to make some changes on the fly, just in anticipation of some of the features that we're going to be building into this report later, so that we don't have redundant slicers. Later in this lesson, I'm going to build a big filter panel that's going to kind of come out, roughly about like this, and it's going to have a bunch of different filters that our users can use. And then when they don't need it, it's just going to collapse. That's why I pointed out that we want to make sure that we're reserving some space over here, because when the filter panel is engaged, like I said, it's going to come out, pretty far and have a bunch of different slicers that people can use to sort of filter the data. So the next, view that we're building should be really, really fast to build. We're basically just grabbing a couple of different items here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to build an area here where we can include the map that we built over here. This is where we're going to start talking about one of my favorite features in Power BI, and that is bookmarks. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go up here to View in our ribbon, and we're going to open the Bookmark panel. And notice that currently we haven't added any bookmarks. That's fine. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create one new bookmark, and we're going to double click on that, and we're going to call this new bookmark Summary Insights. And this is the bookmark that people are going to engage when they want to view all of these visuals. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add another bookmark, and we're going to call this Location. And this is going to be the bookmark that people engage when they want to see the location view, or this map over here. So right now, notice if I click on Summary Insights or click on Location, there's no difference, right? They're both just showing these visuals here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over here to my selection pane, and notice these little eyeball icons next to all of the objects in this Summary Insights group of visuals here. These just indicate that all of the visuals, and in fact everything in this group, is currently visible. I'm going to just click on this icon here, and you can see that by clicking on that icon, there's now a line going through it, and you can see that all of the visuals over here, they immediately disappeared. So what I'm going to do is, with all of those visuals hidden, I'm going to right click on Location, I'm going to update that. And now notice when I click on Location, I can just keep clicking on this bookmark, and my Summary Insights visuals aren't showing. Now let's go back up here to Summary Insights. Everything is still hidden. I'm going to go ahead and click on this and show those visuals again. I'm going to right click on Summary Insights. I'm going to update that. And now notice when I click on Location, no visuals. When I click on Summary Insights, there are my visuals again. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build out visuals on this blank screen that we have that isn't really blank, right? Our visuals are still there. They're just invisible right now. So let's go ahead, and first I'm going to click on the hidden text box here, and this should work. Let's just go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to paste it because I'm going to need a text box for the new view that I'm building so that people know what they're looking at. So let me just go ahead and I'm trying to grab the line here at the bottom. One thing that you might want to do is just turn on your Summary Insights page and grab your new text box and just kind of drag it so that it aligns with the previous text box. And then we're going to call this new text box, we're going to change Summary to Location. And of course it looks terrible because everything's sort of overlapping. So let's just click back on Location. And there we go, Austin Housing Data Insights. This is the location view that we're building. Now let's go over to our location, sort of working area, and let's grab our map. Let's copy it over here. And I'm going to make this as big as I want to. We've got plenty of room now, knowing that we're not going to be carrying over a lot of our filters. I'm just going to kind of slide this down like so. And I'm going to go ahead and play with my options here just a little bit. One thing that I'm going to do, I think, is let's turn back on our Summary Insights. And I'm just going to click on my map here. And let's see what this looks like when I just bring over my formatting options. Not bad. Everything's pretty red, which is fine for now. We can change this here as we go. Click back on location. And the next thing that I'm going to do is let me go ahead and grab my house price color, which if you'll remember, when I change this, it changes which dots get colored over here, right? So let's go ahead and just copy that over. And don't need to worry about syncing this particular one. But this slicer is very, very important for this map. So what I want to do is, let's go ahead and hide the background on this slicer. And I'm going to go ahead and just try to make some additional changes to it. Let's go between is what we want. Values, I want these values to be much bigger than they currently are. I want it to be as easy to read as possible. And, sorry, let's go with a dark black font. That'll be fine. I'm adding backgrounds to these just so that they're a little bit easier to see. Here, I'm going to give this a more intuitive, user-friendly name than just house price color. Someone, who is jumping into this report for the first time, they're not likely to know what that means. So let me just say, pick a range of home prices to highlight in the map below. Let's see, the colors, you can even add additional information, like the colors will update based on your selection. The colors will update based on your selection. Went back and deleted it because I noticed that I was capitalizing the first letter of each word. Okay. Got plenty of room to work with. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger. There we go. Next thing that I'm going to do is let's try using blue, or you know what? I'm probably going to use red as my spotlight color. So just to help users understand that this is the range that they're going to be seeing down here, I think it makes sense to use the same color in my slider that I'm going to use as my accent color down here. So let's go ahead and make sure that our bubbles are being colored correctly. Currently it's set for property count. I want to change this back to field value. And let's find our property color. So remember, I had hard-coded in that orange in my property color measure here because I actually didn't know exactly which colors I was going to use here. Now I do know, so let's go ahead and head back to, let's go to our background color. I need to remind myself which color is being used here. E0144C. So let's go back over here and E0144C. There we go. And if you want to play a little bit, notice that the gray that I'm using for my non-selected bubbles is almost exactly the same as this grayscale map. So I'm just going to play with some colors a little bit here. I knew that, C, however many C's there are, I knew that that was a slightly darker gray than what I had selected. So I think I'm just going to roll with that for now. I'm not using, you might be thinking based on the previous lesson, well, Sean, I thought you were going to use maybe blue for the other ones. And the reason that I'm not using blue is because I'm not trying to really draw a distinction between the red dots and the gray dots. I'm trying to sort of suppress these non-selected dots entirely, right? Because they're less important. What I really, really want people laser focused on are the red dots, because those are indicated up here in this range. So, now if I change this, people can see, there's a lot going on, but if people zoom in, they can at least see the red dots that are highlighted in this map here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give this a more sort of descriptive title, because right now it's still just using the default Power BI title here. I'm going to make this as large as I can make it. This title is not terribly important here, but we are going to try to give the user as much information about what they're looking at as possible. So let's just give the user the background that this map shows all properties in the Austin, Texas area. The dots are highlighted based on the home prices above. Use the filter panel to reduce these options. Let's see, the number of properties. Dang, and it went to another line, which is what I was trying to avoid. Let's try making this 12.5. That looks good. Some of this information is a little bit redundant given what we have up here. So, but that's fine. We'll leave it as is for now. I'm gonna drop this down just a little bit more. And honestly, this is looking pretty good. Of course, this filter panel, we have not actually built it yet. We're going to build it, later on in this lesson. Then users can, for example, select that they only want to look at a specific house type, or that they only want to look at houses that meet certain price thresholds, or that are a certain size, or that have a certain type of school nearby. So we're going to add the filters later, but for now we've at least got our location visuals set up. So the next thing that we're going to do is the same thing that we did here with our visuals for summary insights. We're just going to grab everything that is on this current view. We're going to right click and we're going to group them. Or if you want, you can also right click over here and create the group in the selection panel. And we're going to call this new group location, just for, I think, it's the most intuitive name to give it. And then once we're done here, we're just going to go ahead and click location. We're going to update it again. Then we're going to have to go to summary insights, and we're going to have to tell the summary insights page what to do with the location group. So we're going to have to hide location again and update summary insights. And the reason that location was visible when I went to summary insights is that Power BI doesn't know what to do with the location visuals because they didn't exist when we created the summary insights bookmark. So it is a little bit repetitive. You are going to have to jump back and forth and sometimes tell each bookmark what to do with any new visuals that you add, but it doesn't take all that long. And then once you've configured your bookmarks correctly by updating them, then you can click on the bookmarks over here and notice my location's gone again. It's still being hidden. See, this is one of the things that I'm talking about. All we have to do is just unhide this and update our location again. And now users can click back and forth between different collections of visuals. And notice that we're still on the same page. We're just hiding and unhiding the groups of visuals that we created. Notice over here, when I select summary insights or location, notice that the visible and hidden icon alternates back and forth between these. So this is basically all we're going to do for the next 2 pages too. We're just going to create 2 more views for schools and features, and then we're going to give the user the ability to toggle back and forth between all of these bookmarks. And then once we're done with that, we're going to set up a control panel roughly in this area where users can just select a button and toggle back and forth between the 4 views in our report. But for now, we're at least done with our location page. Now it's time to update our schools visuals over here with our theme and pull all of these visuals over to our main Austin Housing Data Insights page. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to clear out an area here for our new visuals. So let's go ahead and create a new bookmark. We'll call this schools. After we've created our schools bookmark, let's go ahead and hide location because we're not going to need that information here. If you want to, before we bring over the other visuals, we can go ahead and copy our text box again. And let's go ahead and unhide. If you want to, you can even hide everything except for the text box for location. And let's go ahead and pull that down like we did before. kind of, if you have the setting turned on so that visuals kind of snap together, then hopefully your text will line up perfectly. And then we're going to change location now to schools. And we'll go ahead and re-hide everything. So hide location. We have our new title here for Austin Housing Data Insights Schools, because there's our new text box here. Now let's go ahead and hop over to our schools page that we had built. Let's just grab all of these visuals, hold down Control and C to copy them, and we're just going to paste all of these visuals onto the page, and I'm not going to sync any slicers. No need to do that the way that we're building this. And just so that I have more real estate to work with here, let's go ahead and collapse these panels just by clicking on their titles. I'm going to make this full screen. There we go. Okay, so you can see that right now my title is being covered up. I'm going to have to resize all of these images again just to sort of make the most of the space that I have here on the page. So let's just get to very quickly sort of shrinking some of this stuff down. I'm going to see if I can pull my slicer down to roughly there. My cards don't look too bad, but I am going to try to shrink these a little bit and see if I can keep the titles of my cards from being cut off. So, we just want to kind of keep resizing everything until we're pretty satisfied with, the amount of space between all of our visuals. We don't want to, we don't want everything to look, super close to each other. That's going to create the sensation that everything's very, very cluttered on the page. My rule of thumb for how much space I try to keep between the different visuals on the page is I try to keep roughly the width of a number 2 pencil, maybe slightly less than that, but that's just kind of my own personal preference, my own rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be perfect, just enough that everything doesn't look super cluttered. And while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of, on my slicer here, I'm just going to get rid of the title. Okay, so, overall this works pretty well for my layout here. Now it's time to go ahead and start just updating the presentation of all of my visuals here. So real quickly, I'm just going to go over here and start with my card visuals. Let's go ahead and go to our general settings. Let's remove the background from these cards. Overall, I think that these cards look pretty decent, but if you will recall, on our first page, I did use a blue font for all of my callout values here. So let's just quickly go ahead and use our Austin, Texas blue for all of the callout values. On my slicer here that allows people to, influence this map, let's go ahead and make our callout values in this slicer. Let's make those, I think I'm on the right value here, blue. Actually, I think I'm just going to leave those gray. I do want to make the text a little bit larger, and I'm also debating possibly adding back a title because, for somebody who's jumping into a Power BI report for the first time, it may not be super obvious to someone right out of the gate that these are interactive. So whenever, you're worried that your users may not know to interact with something that is intended to be interactive, feel free to give them some text sort of describing, what they're supposed to do with, for example, this slicer and what it influences. Because, one of the worst things that we can do as Power BI developers is to build a super cool interactive feature and then have our users not know that it's a super cool interactive feature. And if they don't interact with it, then, why did we even bother building it? So I think I'm actually going to make a small adjustment here. On my map, I'm going to just delete my background. And actually, one thing that I'm noticing is that when I delete my background, it could make it difficult for somebody to see some of this text. So I'm going to do something that I haven't been doing so far. I'm going to add my background back, but I am going to delete the title. I'm going to move this entire thing down just a little bit. And I'm going to drop this down. And let's try adding a title back to our slicer here. But we're going to make sure that we're telling people what to do with it. So click the items below to change the legend in the bubble map. I'm going to shrink that text down just a little bit. Let's italicize it. This way, as soon as our users come here, hopefully they see this text. At the very least, they're going to notice all of this. And the other thing that we want to do here is, because this map is designed to be configured based on the selection that we have up here, I want to make sure that my slicer is also set for single select, and I want to go ahead and turn on force selection. I want to make sure that something is always selected at all times. Next, let's go to our, let me go ahead and drop that down. The other thing that I want to make sure that I'm doing here is I want to make sure that whatever is selected here has a color that makes sense. Right now, the selected color is black. That's pretty dark and doesn't really match any of the other design choices that we've made here. So let me see if I can change that selection color. So I think that white will actually be fine for the selected color. Now let me see if I can change the selected fill color. Let's see what red looks like. Blue is probably not a great option because there's so much other blue on the page. So let's go ahead and make that red. Let's see what this looks like without any kind of border selection. I might keep a slight border, maybe just make it kind of dark red. I don't want my border on the selected item to be too distracting here, but I just want to make sure that this is working at all times. And also, another benefit of using red for my selection color is that, and maybe you're even noticing right now as you're following along with me, my eyes, when I look at this view, when I take a step back from this page, my eyes go straight to schools and my eyes go straight to school rating because of that more vibrant sort of red color that's happening here. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that we want. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do very, very quickly here is I'm just going to go to my map settings, and I've been using grayscale. Again, I like to use light sometimes, and I also use grayscale. I kind of go back and forth on whether or not I use light or grayscale. So far in this report, I've been using grayscale, I think, for everything. I do not mind light at all, and in fact, I don't think it makes a huge difference. And something like the light color scheme for this map does draw more attention to things like roads and major highways, and even like water elements of the terrain, like the rivers that you see here. I think it looks like there's another river or a creek down here. Not very familiar with Austin's geography, but obviously the blue areas are some kind of water element. But I am going to use grayscale just for consistency. But you do you. If you think that you like the light map style better, I get it. Not a huge deal. It's definitely not a deal breaker on this particular view. And the next thing that I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and try to come up with, maybe some kind of color gradient for the items that we have here. I think that I'm going to go to my color options, and, some people might associate red with poorer schools, but I'm still going to go ahead and use red, I think, for my exceptional schools. Let's go ahead and use a lighter red for good schools. For my average schools, I'm just going to make those a light blue and dark blue for poor. So one thing that I'm noticing here as I'm doing this is I did forget when I was building this school rating thing to this group that I created over here in my school section, was I forgot to add a ordering column for my groups. If you'll recall, when we were doing the exercise with grouping our prices, we had to create our own ordering in order to get our different price groups to sort in the right order. Something else that is extremely important when you're building, data visuals is to make sure that if there is an implied hierarchy in your data elements, that those are in the right order. So in a perfect world, these ought to flow poor to average to good to exceptional, not average, exceptional, good, poor. That makes it harder for users, to just intuitively sort of grasp what the color hierarchy down here is indicating. So super quickly, let's go ahead and go back to our group setting. I'm just going to remind myself real quickly of the groups that I made here. We've got poor, good, exceptional was everything over 9. 5 to 7 was average. Everything below 5 was poor. So let's go ahead and grab our school rating. And I'm going to create very quickly a new group here. Everything below 5 is going to be 1. Everything below 7 is going to be 2. Everything below 9 is going to be 3. And everything else is going to be 4. And I'll go ahead and call this group rating order. Let's go ahead and hit OK here. There's our new group rating order. Let's go ahead and click on group rating. We're going to go up here to this little icon here that enables us to sort a column by a different field or column in our data. Let's go ahead and grab our group rating order. And now you can instantly see that we have poor, average, good, exceptional as the order up here, which is exactly what we want. Over here, the next thing that we're going to need is first, let's give this a more intuitive title. Let's go ahead and call this just, and we may need to write a DAX-driven measure here. And that's fine, but let's go ahead and see if we can just delete zip code. And, okay. Nope, okay, we are going to have to create a DAX title for this. That's totally fine. This is not very complicated to do. But what we want here, the reason that I said we're gonna have to create a DAX title for this measure is currently it says property count by school rating. Now, when I select school size, it still says by school rating, even though of course we are now looking at school size and students per teacher. So we want to make sure that every time we make a selection here, that our title updates the way that it should. So let's quickly go ahead and create a new title here. And I'm going to call this school chart title. And let's go ahead and I'm going to use if. I always debate internally whether or not I'm going to use if or switch as the function, but again, I know I do a lot of switch, so let's demonstrate the if function again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a really useful function called selected value, and I'm going to find my school group's order field that was created in my field parameter, and I'm going to say if the selected value for my parameter school group's order equals 1, then property count percent by school rating. And I'm just going to copy all of this because this is going to be kind of rinse and repeat. If it equals 2, property count percent by school size. And if it equals 3, by students per teacher, or average students per teacher. Otherwise, nothing. And just to explain super quickly what is happening in this DAX, I want to go quickly over here to my table view. And I'm going to click on the parameter school groups that we created when we built the field parameter. And so actually, I'm noticing that I made a small mistake in that DAX. So Power BI, when you're creating field parameters, not only does it give titles and allow you to manipulate the titles of the different columns that you selected for that field parameter, it automatically creates an order based on the order that you selected those fields. And you can change this on the fly. So in this instance, the first item, rating, has an order number of 0, followed by group size, which is 1, followed by the students per teacher, which is 2. And of course, over here in my school chart title, I said if the selected value is 1, give it, the title property count percent by school rating. If it's 2, give it property count by school size. If it's 3, give it property count by average students per teacher. What selected value does is this is going to evaluate what's happening over here in this slicer here. So right now, the value that I have selected is school rating. If I change it to this, the value being selected is school size, then students per teacher. So right now, based on the logic in my data model, if I select school rating from this slicer, what is being evaluated by the selected value of order is going to be 0, right? School rating is selected. If I go to my parameter down here, school rating corresponds to 0. So that means, again, that my school chart title is not currently accurate. In order to get this to work the way that I had intended, I'm going to need to change these orders to 0, 1, 2, not 1, 2, 3. I forgot for a moment that Power BI assigns the orders and field parameters starting at 0, not at 1. So now that I have this school chart title that is going to look and see for any given report page what the currently selected value for my parameter is, and then it's going to swap out just different text blurbs. And I can use these text blurbs as my title for this chart. So let's go ahead and go to General. Let's go to Title for this chart. And instead of using the built-in title that Power BI generated, I'm going to use conditional formatting again. And I'm going to select a field value. And I'm going to grab my school chart title DAX. And now you can see property count percent by school rating. This should change now every time I make a selection up here. The next thing I'm going to do is let's see if I can get all of this title onto a single line here. Notice the teachers being dropped down. One other thing that I like to do as much as I can is I like to keep all of my titles on a single line when possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but I think here we can probably get it on one line. Let's just change average to average and see what that looks like. I don't know if that's going to get us all the way there. It didn't. So let's try changing this. Percent of properties. It's not much shorter, but it's a little bit shorter. And now I may just have to kind of meet it halfway. There we go. A little bit of nudging was all it took to get all of that onto a single line. Now I just need to nudge my map over. There we go. Okay. I'm just going to keep nudging everything over just a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Now we, one thing that I noticed as I was kind of clicking through this thing is school size. I'm having exactly the same problem here. These items are not in the most logical order. So very, very quickly, let's go back to our schools. Let's go to school size. Let's remind ourselves what's happening in these groups. Very small was 400 through 600, 700 through 900, 1,000 through 1,200. So basically in increments of 3. That's pretty easy to remember. Let's go ahead and click on average school size. Right click, we're going to create a new group here again. We're going to create a list. And I'm just very quickly going to create all of my groups here. Okay, starting with 400 to 600, that's going to be 1. Then 700 to 900 is 2. Then 3. Then what's next? 4. And then our big ones up here are going to be 5. Let's go ahead and hit OK. If you want to, you can call this something like group size order. Doesn't really matter what you call your order columns because they're not user facing. The user doesn't need to know about these order columns. They're just there so that we can make the visual sort the way that it should sort. Now let's click on our group size column. Let's go up here to our ordering controls, and we're going to use group size order. Now you can see that everything is lined up the way that it should. Very small, small, medium, large, very large. Let's go ahead and apply some more heat map-like coloring to this. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down my color options here. Very large is going to be my red. I'm going to use a lighter red for my large. Then I'm going to use, let's go with kind of a light blue here. Then I'm going to use a slightly darker blue, and finally the darkest blue that I have for very, very small. And we're probably going to have to do the same thing with students per teacher, I would imagine. Let's go ahead and click on students per teacher, large class, medium class, small class. Now, you've already seen me demonstrate twice, how to get these values in the right order. These are actually in an okay order. They're just in the wrong, they're just not sorted correctly from left to right. I would really like to have small starting over here on the left and large at the right. If you're thinking, Sean, I don't really want to go through another exercise of, taking all the numbers and creating a separate order column, there are other ways to get the same effect. At the end of the day, there are many different ways to make sure that this stuff sorts correctly alphanumerically. So in this instance, let's do something slightly different. Let's just go up here and edit our original group. And let's just call this one 1-small classes, then 2-medium classes, and finally 3-large classes. And this time we'll just do it this way. And notice you get exactly the same effect. Power BI did say, oh man, Sean changed everything. Let's pick new colors. I'm like, weirdly, I don't hate these colors, but obviously they're not even close to being, a good fit for the theme that we picked. But I'm like, okay, that's kind of a cool, nice kind of neon green and blue. At least they're very bright on my computer. Maybe they look slightly different on yours. So now let's just quickly go and let's kind of apply the visual hierarchy that we've been working with. That looks pretty good. Large classes are red. Okay, so I think we've got our maps pretty well configured. The last thing that we want to do here is very quickly, we want to go ahead and fix this visual so that it looks, as clean as everything else does here on the page. What I'm going to do very, very quickly is let's go back to our selection. I'm going to open up Summary Insights, and let's try grabbing one of our visuals here. I'm going to grab this in the background, this property count by build year, and I'm going to copy its formatting, and I'm going to apply it over here to this visual just to kind of see how it looks. Of course, some of the formatting really screwed up that visual. No big deal. Let's go ahead and hide our Summary Insights again. Let's go back up here. And I'm kind of worried about this visual because I've got all of these different blues happening on this blue background. This visual may not look as good as some of my others unless I, kind of pay it a little bit more attention. So let's go back to our y-axis settings, which got screwed up by me copying over the formatting. Let's change it back to categorical to kind of fix that issue. Overall, the visual's not looking half bad, but I need to make sure that in carrying over my legend, that I also make sure all of my bars here are still readable. So let's go ahead and apply exceptional. I shouldn't have to worry too much about my reds. Might use a slightly darker red there. Actually, let's go light. And then I want average to be kind of a light blue and my dark blue. Okay, on the whole, that's not looking as bad as I kind of worried that it might. Let me try kind of working a little bit with the transparency settings in the background. I definitely don't want to lose my transparency because notice if I go too dark on the background color, how hard it becomes to see some of these blue bars. So I want to kind of brighten this up by increasing my transparency settings. And I think I'm just going to kind of leave it about like that. Okay, the next thing that I need to do is I need to do the same thing for my school sizes, because notice that all of my colors over here don't align to my legend colors here. So let's go ahead and update our bars like so. There we go. And finally, students per teacher should be quite a bit easier. In fact, I'm even going to darken up this blue. I'm going to cheat just a little bit so that users can see it more easily. That's also a really useful trick if you didn't see what I did just now. If you have a color that is technically identical, like this medium color that I'm using here, but you're worried that it might be just a little bit difficult for people to read, all you have to do is just open up more colors. And just, you notice that it gets darker down here and brighter up here. If you just drop the color down a little bit, it's a good way to just kind of quickly cheat on making some of your colors darker. I'm going to do the same thing with my small here. I'm going to drop that down and make it just a touch darker. And I'm even going to do the same thing with my Austin, Texas blue. Just a very, very quick and convenient way of just darkening up your colors if you're worried that they're going to blend into the background a little bit too much. Okay, this is all looking pretty decent. I might try one more time to see if I can get the legend to work here, but it's a very, very tight fit. I do think that users are going to have to use the legend over here, which is another instance where, if you're worried that your users aren't going to know how to interpret these colors, you can always, give them a little bit of guidance like I'm going to do here. Let's use DIN. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to italicize it. Same legend as bubble map. Just letting users know, in case they don't immediately grasp it, that all of these colors align to what's happening over here. And the other thing that I want to make sure that you're clear on, and that you might even want to consider giving your users some guidance on, is that they're intended to click on this map, right, in order to filter this information down. Like, notice that I clicked on 78748, which is our largest zip code by the number of properties. And you'll notice down here again, all of my large classes are over here as far as students per teacher. All of my smaller classes are over here. So there must be a school down in this area, somewhere. Not immediately seeing it, but we do know that it's there. Might be more easy to find on one of the other map styles. For a second, I thought that I almost saw it. But if you're worried that your users, won't have enough experience with Power BI to automatically know that they're supposed to be interacting with this map using this great visual over here, this is another great example where, you don't have to be subtle. Let's just add another text box. I'm going to drag it down here to the bottom, right under the map and the stacked bar chart that we have. I'm going to turn off the background, and I'm just going to leave a note. In order to maximize usefulness of the bubble chart above, click on the zip codes in the stacked bar chart to deep dive into those postal codes or geographic areas. Again, don't want to wordsmith too much. Write whatever you think might be helpful for someone who is using this tool, and then make the text as large as you feel like you reasonably can. And we've got this, little carved out area here at the bottom of our report that is a result of this, footer that we put in our layout. So we might as well use that area to give our users any kind of guidance that we think might be useful to them. So we're now done with our schools view. Let's go ahead and just drag and grab all of these visuals. I'm going to create a new group, and that's going to immediately appear up here in my selection pane. Let's go ahead and drop that down. Group 1, I'm now going to call schools. And I'm going to go ahead and just update my bookmark for schools. And now I'm going to click on my bookmark for legend. I'm going to hide schools. I'm going to click on summary insights. That looks good. Let's go ahead and go back to schools where it's still hidden because we triggered the hiding of this group. Let's reveal it again and update schools. Now I should, nope, if I skip and go back to Summary Insights, notice schools are still appearing. So let's go ahead and hide it there and update Summary Insights. Now I should be able to click back and forth between all of these bookmarks and hide everything exactly the way that I had intended. So last but not least, we're going to just create our final view for our report, which is going to incorporate the visuals on our features page that we created. That includes things like our key influencers visual and a few other items, sort of indicating, what really matters most when it comes to some of the listing prices and language that, some of the listing agents are using around more expensive properties versus less expensive properties. So let's go ahead and head back to our Austin Housing Data Insights page. Let's create a new bookmark. We're going to go ahead and just call this Features. Since I've already done this a couple of times now, let's go ahead and, while I'm thinking about it, copy and paste our text box here, which it looks like now actually got maybe perfectly lined up on top of this. No, let's see. There we go. There's our text box. The copy and paste was not cooperating, but let's go ahead and just drag this into place, kind of waiting for it to snap perfectly over top of what I had there. Looks like it lost my formatting. Not a big deal. Let's just go ahead and make that red again. Okay, that's looking good. Go ahead and pull this down to the bottom. Now let's go ahead and hop over to our features page. Let's just go ahead and copy and paste. Again, we don't need to worry about syncing. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of drag these like we did before. Let's go ahead and collapse our selection and bookmark pane, get those out of the way. I'm just going to kind of copy and paste everything so that it occupies this space well, but nothing, looks, super squished together. Just trying to get everything roughly in position here. We're going to need to resolve our situation here with our parameter slicer. I'll show you what my plans for that are here in just a moment. That's all looking pretty good. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do here is let's go back to our selection pane. Let's open up our summary insights. I'm going to reveal, let's see, number of properties available. Let's go ahead and just unhide everything. In the background here, I'm clicking on this number of properties available by year built, just so I can copy the formatting options again. Once that background visual is clicked on, you'll notice that it's being highlighted over here, showing that I am clicking on that visual. Just going to copy my formatting settings again. Let's go ahead and apply those to this chart and this chart. I'm not even sure what this will do to the matrix since it's such a different visual. It didn't do much, which is totally fine. Once we're done with that, let's go ahead and hide our summary insights again. There we go. Now let's go ahead and update all of our formatting options. Notice that that the no's on this chart are now almost completely hidden. So we're definitely going to have to quickly make some adjustments to the formatting of our visuals. Let's start with this one. For my columns, I'm going to use my red for yes. Let's see what blue looks like. I think I might actually like a slightly lighter blue. That looks pretty good. Let's turn our legend back on. I'm going to use top left stacked. Currently, you can see that value is my legend title. Let's go ahead and make our legend a little bit more professional. I'm going to call this properties have the feature that is indicated on the x-axis. Let's go ahead and make this stuff a little bit larger. My legend's looking pretty good now. I'm going to try making my title up here a little bit larger too so that it stands out. Now we're moving on to the next visual. Oops. Try to make this just a little bit larger. Let's shrink that down just a little bit. I'm going to shrink my matrix down just a little bit. Okay, now it's time to incorporate our parameter slicer into this visual. So we're going to kind of pull off some visual trickery here just using layering in Power BI. So I'm going to go ahead and change my title here to median home price by, and then I'm just going to delete everything that comes after by. And I'm going to use my slicer here, and I'm going to delete the background, and I'm going to delete anything else on it that I don't need. Let's go ahead and remove the slicer heading. And I'm just going to drag my slicer into position here. I want to make sure that it's wider than all of my options in the slicer. I don't want anything cut off. Now let's drop down our values. Let's give this a white background. Let's select DIN as our font. And let's increase the size here. And I just want it to look like so. If you want to try getting creative by, playing with the colors of the slicer, that's also fine. Like you could do something like this just to make it a little bit more obvious to users that they're supposed to interact with it here. But unfortunately, one annoying feature of Power BI is that you cannot change the colors of the checkboxes in a slicer, which can make it a little bit harder to read these items. So you might have to play a little bit, but that's why when it comes to drop-down slicers, I'm a less is more kind of guy. I like to just keep them white and do something like this. Or possibly, if you want to get a little bit more of a pop of color, go red with the text or blue, just to kind of, attract somebody who's using this, attract their attention to the slicer. So we've got that now. But all people have to do now is just click through here. And, the slicer kind of becomes a part of the title of the chart. One more thing. Let's go look at our x-axis and see how this looks. Ooh, I do not like that much. Yeah, I think I'm just going to keep this on a continuous axis. It's about as good as I think I'm going to be able to make this look. Lot size, that's going to be super, super busy. Year constructed. Okay, we'll just kind of leave that as is for now. Now let's go ahead and turn our attention to the last visual that we have here that's going to take a little bit of effort to change the look and feel of. Let's go to our matrix, which has tons of different settings that we can customize, of course. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on my values, update those to DIN font, which is what I'm using across this report as much as possible. Next, let's go ahead and update our column headers to DIN as well. Trying to make sure that I don't have any scrolling required by the user. So I might need to make this just a little bit wider and shrink my key influencers visual. Again, you want to make sure that all of your visuals align. It's just going to look more professional and cleaner if you kind of drag all of your visuals and make sure that they're all perfectly right aligned and left aligned. Once we're done with that, let's go ahead and quickly update our row headers as well to DIN. Next, let's go ahead and update our background values. Doesn't really matter as much what you use here. I'm going to try to get a little bit creative with my colors here. I'm going to use a slightly lighter blue and a darker blue. And then for my column headers, let's go dark blue, maybe even slightly darker. And of course, since we're using dark colors in our matrix, we want to make sure that our text really pops by making our text white. Need to do the same thing on our values here. Let's make all of our text colors white. And then for our grid, I'm not really sure that the grid is really adding all that much. Let's drop down our options here and our border. Might even try making that dark. You can also play with the row padding a little bit if you want more space between each row, or if you want all of your rows in your matrix super clustered together, you can go to your grid and your options and reduce your padding down to 0, and then you'll be able to see even more of the values down here just at a quick glance. I'm going to leave it pretty clustered together here at a moment. For the moment, one thing that this matrix is definitely going to need is an explanation to the user of what they're even looking at in this visual. So let's go ahead and give this a nice user-friendly title. Something along the lines of, which words do listing agents most use to describe properties at different price points? Good, and that was all able to fit on a single line. That's looking pretty decent, I think, for the moment. Next, let's go ahead and update our formatting here. The reason that the Key Influencers visual is always pretty quick to format is because there really just aren't a whole lot of formatting options to speak of on this visual. Let's go ahead and copy my formatting from over here over to this visual just to align it to our baseline. We don't have all that much that we can do with sort of the top section here. For our bubble visuals, let's go ahead and give this kind of a darker blue background. And for our main font and icon color, I think black's probably okay. Primary element text, not even sure what that is updating. Other primary elements, oh, okay, it's up here, which I'm fine having this red underscore. My eyes immediately went up here. Okay, for our secondary element text, okay, that's the text here. I'm just going to make those white. Let's try red there. I think blue is probably going to be a little bit too subtle. Yeah, I'm just going to make those red. And for any charts that we have, let me go ahead and just click on this. Blue is being used as my reference line for my data color. Let's see if maybe red works okay. I'll lighten that up a little bit. There we go. Might even try gray. Yeah, I think I like gray. And then notice that my primary data element is still using one of the reds up here. That's probably the one of the primary element colors that I set up here. My reference line up here is blue. That's configured down here. We could also try making that red if we really wanted to, but I think I'm just going to leave it blue. Okay, everything is looking pretty good. I wish that you had the ability to make some of this text a little bit larger, but unfortunately for this particular visual, they just don't give you many options to change some stuff like this. But on the whole, I think the presentation of this is pretty decent. So we're just going to go ahead and end it there. One more thing that we're going to do real quickly is let's just go ahead and grab all of the visuals that we created for our features view. Let's go ahead and group these together. We're going to call this new group features. And we're going to go ahead and update our features bookmark. Next, let's go to schools. Let's hide features. I'm going to update this. Now I'm going to click on location. Let's go ahead and update location. Let's click on summary insights, update summary insights. Then we're going to swing back to features and of course turn our features visuals back on. Now we should be able to click back and forth between any of these bookmarks and see all of our new views that we created. So a lot of the formatting of our visuals is officially complete. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to finish rounding out this report by giving, hypothetical users of this tool some more capabilities and tools that they can use to really slice and dice and quickly filter through this data. Because ultimately, our users are not going to be using a bookmarks panel over here to navigate through all of these views. We're going to give them buttons that they can click on to switch back and forth. And of course, we're also going to create a panel full of useful slicers that they can use to, just filter through and find the different subsets of this data that they're interested in looking at. So let's go ahead and head back to our first summary insights view, and let's go ahead and start building out some of those other super useful user features.